As government agencies continue to evolve and deliver more services digitally, cloud computing solutions have become increasingly important to keep up with the need for scale and real-time analysis, especially when it comes to ensuring online payment solutions. Cloud solutions are also becoming increasingly important in identifying and reducing the risk of fraud and maintaining payment integrity. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and here to talk about that today are Amir Drusbosky, Managing Director at Deloitte Consulting, and Saqib Sheikh, Head of Strategy and Growth, Federal and Nonprofits at AWS. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Thanks for having us.
So, Saqib, what are some of the biggest challenges that federal agencies are facing when it comes to integrating and modernizing payment solutions into their digital citizens platforms?
Well, first, let's acknowledge payments integrity is still a big problem in government and deserves our collective attention. While improper payments and unknown payment amounts decreased from 2021, in 2022, they're still amounting to $247 billion and representing about 5% of all payments dispersed. And the root cause flagged by program administrators continues to be data. Out of $247 billion, $200 billion was attributed either because the data that was needed didn't exist or couldn't be accessed. Confirmed fraud, by contrast, was about $4.4 billion, a huge amount, and there may be more fraud out there, but data is the biggest challenge and possibly the easiest issue to resolve. We as providers to government need to help them figure out a couple of things. One, how to bring data together that is locked away in legacy systems and infrastructure. Two, how to share that data in a controlled, secure, and audited manner so it respects the rules and regulations. And three, generating actionable insights based on that data so that those that are determining eligibility criteria for payments, for example, can take better decisions in real time.
And Amir, from your perspective, and beyond maybe some of the challenges that Saqib just mentioned, what do you see are some of the biggest risks that federal agencies also need to be aware of when integrating and modernizing payment solutions into their digital citizen platforms?
Absolutely. One of the risks I see that many of our customers have faced is that cloud service providers often charge for their services in a different way than we're used to paying for if we've been paying for on-prem hosting. And so instead of worrying about power or space or cooling, you might have to worry about things like transaction volumes or compute hours or data egress volumes. And those things are important, but you may not be used to monitoring them. And so agencies really looking at moving their workloads to the cloud should really plan for a cost stabilization and optimization period where you can start seeing how your applications work in the cloud in this new world. Monitor the ways that you're going to be paying for the cloud, and then spend some time optimizing your applications so that not only do they perform well and presumably better in the cloud than they did on premises, but also that you're optimizing that cost. And that can be generally a multi-month effort getting those costs down.
No small challenge. Back to you, Saqib, and I'll ask you as well, Amir. So how can cloud computing offer a smarter way to modernize online payment options and also mitigate some of the associated risks? Amir, maybe you could start with that one.
Yeah, Saqib mentioned in his introduction, right, the need for the most up-to-date information available about transactions, across systems to determine how much payment is due, either to a provider, a beneficiary, a constituent from an online platform. And with the cloud, we can really pull together this real-time payment information, your policy rules, your ERP data, your financial management system data, the fraud data, and really make determinations across a bigger amount of data, making sure that we make more accurate determinations and make them faster. And so cloud is really a huge enabler, both in compute scale and being able to build models that really look across all this data that were compute limited and on-premises implementations, but also an accelerator, both because the data is there and we can share it more easily and more securely, like Saqib mentioned, but also in the ability just to have massive scales of data that we can look across to find the patterns for fraud.
And your additional thoughts on that one, Saqib?
So I agree with Amir. There are multiple ways cloud can help modernize payments. It's a big problem. You just have to remember that. The US government is the largest employer and the largest procurer of services in the world. So it has the challenge of scale as well as getting smart. So since 2003, we estimate the US federal government has made approximately $1.7 trillion in suspected improper payments. This is going to require truly scalable yet highly resilient solutions that span across program owners, auditors, inspectors general, and the Department of Treasury that processes online payments on behalf of government. So with our partners like Deloitte, we provide enterprise scale data management solutions that can ingest, enrich, and share payment recipient data across the enterprise. We provide machine learning models like Amazon Fraud Detector and SageMaker to detect fraud in claims. And we provide specialized graph databases such as Amazon Neptune, where you can create customer profiles and you can detect relationships between known and new fraudsters. So you're going to have to bring a lot of technology pieces together. And fortunately, cloud has a lot of that.
Well, Amir, I know you're working with a number of federal agencies. Can you share some examples of how agencies and their constituents are benefiting from these solutions and really taking steps to reduce the risk of fraud as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at work for things around financial fraud and the work being done to detect anomalous trades. Look at we're in the world of healthcare where we're looking for a claims payment or we're looking for providers that shouldn't be in the system. Looking at really where we can find actionable data, right? And so one of the things that cloud allows us to do, particularly with different technologies like Saqib just mentioned, is really looking at where we can intervene based on an agency's policies and based on the authorities that they have to find those predictors of those interventions that are going to have the highest likelihood for success, whether that's something like a law enforcement referral or something a lot more simple, like just outreaching to someone who's got anomalous behaviors and letting them know that the agency's on to what they're doing and they're watching closely. And we've seen great results in the federal space of a phone call stopping bad behavior, which is incredibly cost effective compared to something like a fraud investigation and taking legal action.
And Saqib, I know you're working with a number of agencies as well. Can you offer some additional examples of where you're seeing benefits taking shape?
Yeah, a couple of examples I can think of is, a common scenario where citizens experience fraud is moments of crisis. In the event of a federal emergency, such as hurricanes or flooding, people are displaced from their homes and essential services such as banks where they may be keeping paper documentation just aren't accessible. So you need something that can get people their documentation that authenticates them so that they can authenticate not just themselves, but the circumstances that they're in to apply for emergency funds. There's a need for digital record keeping with secure authentication, so departments such as FEMA can disperse emergency funds in a secure way. We have a rich community of independent software vendors in the AWS partner network that provide solutions such as a digital data locker that allows people to manage digital copies of their vital documents. We're also very proud of supporting the GSA to launch login.gov, which provides a single point of entry for services across government. It's built on the highest security standards from NIST and the Cybersecurity National Action Plan, and it scales to meet the demands of over 300 million citizens.
Well, speaking of security, I'd love to get your last thoughts on how can the cloud play, a role not only in transforming the customer experiences, but also helping agencies, move toward and adhere to zero trust architecture guidelines and, to better secure their workloads. Amir?
With the modern IAM platforms in the cloud, we can really manage user access more granularly down to the lowest level of data. And we've been talking, I think, throughout numerous of these questions about how important the ability to access data quickly and securely is. With zero trust, now we can really focus in on securely sharing that data, amalgamating those data sets we need to build the fraud analytics and taking action quickly. But it also helps from a consumer point of view. These agencies share services with one another. I think login.gov is a great example of a service that's shared across multiple agencies. I know I myself use it. Right, so think about how often you enter the same data into different federal agency websites. With zero trust and data sharing enabled by the cloud, now maybe I really could just enter that data once and it would be available to every federal agency that needed to use it. So I think zero trust is going to be a huge part of how we move forward in both fighting fraud, but also securing our data as consumers.
Yes, that centralized approach to logging in was a great example of moving faster towards zero trust. Saqib, finally, your last thoughts on how the cloud really does enhance security.
So Amir is exactly right. Zero trust is a critical topic in government right now. I think the first thing to understand that zero trust is not a product, but a security model. It's built on the singular premise that you cannot assume trust of any user, service, or application, either outside of your enterprise or even within your enterprise. Not only must you authenticate every operation wherever possible, but you need to also build an architecture and establish a norm of operations that assumes a strict security posture. There's a lot of confusion for what zero trust means for government. A good reference that we find is a zero trust strategy paper that the DoD CIO issued in October. It defines what they refer to as target and advanced levels of zero trust. We've done a crosswalk between those levels and where AWS can support. Some of the features we provide include continuous authentication and authorization of services in the cloud, AI ML-based activity monitoring and response, and analytics to measure against baseline user and entity behavior. While cloud features are essential to securing enterprise, they provide the foundational layer of security. Partners are essential to a comprehensive solution. As I mentioned, we have software vendor partners such as Devo, Zscaler, and CrowdStrike that provide critical security applications. We have a rich small business community that provides deep and niche security architecture and operations expertise. But last not least, we work with system integrators such as Deloitte, Booz Allen, Accenture Federal Services, who integrate these services and software into mission-ready, mission-critical solutions for government.
Those are some great points to make on that. Well, Amir Drusbosky and Saqib Sheikh, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your respective insights on ways that the cloud is really enabling the federal government to do a better job of ensuring online payment solutions, and as well as reducing the various risks. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.